All right, I'm gonna call the December 2nd meeting of the MCI Concord Advisory Board to order. I'm gonna take a quick roll call. Do this from memory. Scott?
Here.
Leave it open. Well, it has to be.
Elizabeth?
Here.
And Patrick?
Here.
Okay, in the room, Peter,
Present.
Linda,
Here.
Lee, here, Dan, here. Thank you all. So last time around, I believe Linda was the clerk.
Yes.
We're doing it by first name,
Linda just volunteered last time.
Hey, Linda Miller, I kind of.
right there.
Right there.
Oh, so that's Lee, did you already, have you already do it? Do you mind? No. Okay, it's just.
Reviewing, yeah, you don't have to actually write them.
Okay.
I write them, which is written.
Listen. Can do that. Okay, second order of business is approval of the minutes that Linda so kindly authored for the November 18th.
Yes, I did,
And Erin just walked in. Erin, stay here.
Here.
Thank you.
I did have a couple of, edits to the minutes, so.
Are they administrative? Do you want to go through them?
Well, I just that I don't think, Elizabeth, I believe, was at that meeting, and I don't think you had her, in the,
Acres more?
yeah,
Okay.
so that's the key one.
I had the same
Um,
question and I forgot to follow up whether I was there or not, but
You were there.
yeah, thank you for remembering that I was there.
Yeah. So I'll just give you the other wordage. I don't know.
If I have it in email, Linda, it's
You
okay.
have it.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I'd make a motion to approve, is it November 12th?
November 18th.
November 18th, minutes with the, changes of adding Elizabeth Acres more and the minor verbiage changes proposed by Linda Miller.
That was second by Erin. All those in favor, we'll run through it again. Scott?
Just
Thumbs up.
thumbs up, Scott?
Thumbs up, okay. All right, there you go. Patrick?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth?
Yes.
Okay. In the room, Erin?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Me? All right, I'm staying with them. Okay, and Dan, yes. Okay, thank you, everybody. First, following that is an update from Megan.
All right,
All right,
hi everybody,
hi.
happy to be here today. I have two categories of updates. One, I have a financial update on the earmarks from the legislature. So we have the two amounts, 425 and a 250. I had a meeting with the Executive Office of Economic Development last week to talk about the earmarks because we got the information about how to contract with the office on the funds. I said this at a staff meeting this morning. I feel like I keep asking the same question and are expecting a different answer regarding the timeline. But I'm gonna stop asking now because I have the information and I need to move on, myself. And that the funds do need to be spent by the end of June. So that's not new. I just thought maybe there would be some exception for this project in this earmark funds that we're so grateful to have. But no, the same rules apply, and so that's okay, and it's good to know. The Office of Economic Development has recommended that we start with the 425. Since they're two separate earmarks, and that we enter into a contract with them for that amount, and they want to see the budget for how we plan to spend that. So I know that this board is going before the select board on the 16th with the budget. And, so I wanted to mention that they're looking for a budget for that first chunk of the 425, to get moving on this. And another piece of information that I learned is that they would also accept at the time of contracting, basically an invoice from the town of Concord that reflects the amount of time and funds expended by the town of Concord so far, from actually July 29th, which is when the budget was signed, I believe, to the end of November. So I'm starting to look at all the meetings the various team members have attended, all the time spent working on this, to be able to capture a dollar amount for how much we have spent on MCI during that about 4-month period. And then they would basically, we'd send them an invoice and they would send us, as part of our contracting agreement, a check for the town of Concord. If that makes sense. So it's a little bit, takes a little bit of time, and I'm really trying to go back to my calendar. I started with myself, how many meetings do I have on my calendar? And adding in preparation and other things that are probably wouldn't be on the calendar. You know, how much time we're spending talking to the folks at the bridge, how much time we're kind of, you know, there's a lot of wastewater analysis that's been done. There's been a lot of different things done, website, kind of FAQs, forums. So trying to capture that is something that needs to occur at the time of contracting. So that's really kind of bumped up my priority list, is getting a full spreadsheet in the sense of how much money we've spent so far. And then I have spoken to I've had one preliminary conversation with our finance director. Like, is there a way to use those funds in a future fiscal year? And it's, you know, with kind of a local government here, it has to go into our local receipts. And so how could those funds be kind of used in a future fiscal year? It might be a free cash appropriation. There might be other ways to do it. And if the community is amenable to that at town meeting. So that has not been fully baked yet, but I think we're not going to get to zoning by June 30th. And if there were funds that we've received that could be used for that or appropriated in another way for that function, that might be something I'm exploring and trying to bring a solution.
Before you go on,
Yeah.
Patrick, do you have a question?
Sure.
Yeah, just a quick clarification, Megan. So I think I missed this when you started at the beginning. So the expenses incurred by the town and town staff would come out of our allocated 475 or 725. Is that right?
Yeah, so I mean, we have the two contracts, the total on 725. And that is a lot of money to spend by the end of June, and we've already incurred some expenses, so that the intention would be to recapture some of those costs. That's
Got it.
this exercise that I'm going through, yes.
Okay.
And Elizabeth?
Yeah, so kind of a confusing question, but if you recapture those for your expenses and then we do need that money for the, consultants we're bringing on, is that money going to be available, or have we essentially already spent it? So now we're down how much we can pay a consultant?
I mean, I think the way I was looking at this was that I haven't connected with Dan about his preliminary research yet, but I was thinking that the consultant funds would not exceed 725 to be spent by this June. But if I'm
Right,
wrong
but
on
if we've taken 50,000, or I'm just giving a number for what we're putting what we've already spent, then do we have to take that 50,000 out of what we can put towards the consultant? Or does the town consider it has that, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just worried that.
Yeah, I see, yeah, I mean, I think the way I was looking at this is that the budget for the consultant wouldn't be at that number, for the amount of work in this 6-month period. So this is.
Yeah, although we've talked about.
But if
being
it
able
is,
to-
then the purpose is for the planning, right? And so, I'm open to discussion on that. This was an idea because it was proposed as recuperating expenses, But I certainly am not trying to redirect money away from the purpose of this board and the efforts ahead of you. It was just that the number is so large,
Yeah, no, I see
But
what
the
you're doing. I see what
priority
you're
is-
doing. Get the money back in case we don't spend it on something else. There's been a lot of talk about whether that money will be rolled forward or whether we can get someone under contract and say it will, what the wording is in to be spent, or if we've already promised that money to a consultant. So I just be worried that we take a look at that before we go after the money for money that the town has already spent.
Yeah, and the thing is that it has to happen at the same time. My understanding is that we have to contract in, we need to show what our budget is. And we have one opportunity to invoice them at the same time to say, we've already spent X amount of money. And so, like, pay us back for that. But I think you raise a good point, Elizabeth, about the rolling forward, and so I asked some questions about that too. And I'm still learning, but my understanding is there's two options. We could there could be a request for a new earmark next year, or there could be a request to do something called a PAC, which I don't know if Chris is on. I always forget what that stands for, but that is to basically use the funds in the next year. And what I was hoping, I mean, that sounded good to me, right? Like I'm trying to use them, I'm trying to find a way to use those funds in the next fiscal year. Cause we know this project is gonna go on for a little bit longer than that. And what I learned on this call with the Office of Economic Development is that even if there were to be a PAC, which is to request to use the remainder of the earmark in the next fiscal year, you don't get access to that next summer. It would still be on the same schedule as the earmarks. So it's like, we'd be talking about being able to use the rest of that earmark next November. So there would be a gap in the funding for the project because the PAC wouldn't be approved until like next fall. Chris,
Okay.
is that?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but so let's just use the number 50,000. So they give that to us for things we've already paid for. Where does that
Yeah.
money go then? Where?
It would
who's
have to
getting
go into local receipts, into the,
So then it can get used by anything in the town.
turn to free cash.
Yeah, that's so is there a third option then, or maybe it's not necessary to distinguish it, but a third option that says we use those funds to pay previous expenses, which suddenly opens up some budget funds for the town that we were anticipating spending that we don't need to, and then we can use that as free cash going forward? Or does that require a town meeting approval?
Yeah, I mean, it would, the same problem would happen, right? It's like, we either need to use this money this fiscal year, and if we got a check back, we would still need to, it still would only count for this one fiscal year. So what I'm starting to explore is, if that goes into free cash, is there an opportunity to appropriate some funds for this purpose for next year? And so that is still early days. The purpose is trying to harness the funds that have been granted here for a longer time.
Right. And so this is,
but I haven't figured out the mechanism yet.
this is a classic example of some of the complexities that how this thing plays out, because Megan made the important point that I have not been able to give her the input yet. The input, I'm actually pleased by what you're saying, because the very preliminary input is going to be significantly less than we anticipate. And so the opportunity to sort of claw back, if that's the right phrase, to sort
Reimburse.
of reimburse
Yeah.
for actual time spent, that would be awesome. So I don't know quite what to do with that yet, but I wanted you to at least have it,
Yeah.
so you don't feel like when I do share with you, like, why did you have me spend all that time talking about that?
Yeah, more to come. Yeah, sorry.
I'm other people have their hand up, so let me finish what you're.
I'm sorry, I'm not in control of this though. It's not a staff meeting, apologies. So Dan, however you wanna.
Well, you were in the process of doing an update, I guess.
Yeah, this is the one piece of the financial update, so.
Okay.
Hey,
so before you-
Dan, Scott's had his hand up for a while.
I know, that's where I was gonna, thank you, Patrick, and I just wanna make sure, Scott, did you have something you wanted to add to this
Yeah,
point?
thank you, Megan. I had a question. This land use consultant we're about to retain, is gonna be engaging with quite a few stakeholders from the town. And that's gonna be budgeted, and I'm assuming that those people's times, all those 100 plus stakeholders that we're gonna be talking about are their town staff. And are they gonna be allocating their time towards this job as well?
Chris, do you have thoughts on how we could add that into the budget?
I think it's worth talking about. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe just to add to Megan's comments, the Office of Economic Development understood the town's concerns about being able to spend this beyond June 30th, 2025. And so they had suggested that one area to fill in that that funding was staff time used for this project. So they understood that there's some time sensitivities, and they just want to make it clear that they just implement the earmarks that are approved. And so the earmark was approved for the fiscal year. I think going forward, yeah, maybe it's just worth having this discussion on that we're talking about a timing of funds.
But I hear what you're saying, Scott, how can we build that staff time in to the budget? And I'll find out about that going forward. They did say it's really in July 29th to really November 30th is this one time that you could say, this is what we've expended, and send them the invoice at the time of contracting. But how that is incorporated in the projected budget, I think I need to find more out. So thanks for raising that.
Okay, Peter, Aaron, then Peter, then Patrick.
I think Megan raises an interesting point that regardless of how we allocate the money, come June 30th, we'll hit this sort of financial cliff. And we want to be doing work over the summer with the consultant before we could get any potential new earmarks in November. And how do we fund that? And, is there a way that we can somehow pay through the town, through fire transfer, or is there an opportunity to prepay a consultant would be the other method for that. I don't know how the state would view that, but obviously we don't want to just have to stop work because we don't have any funds through the whole summer, so.
Right.
Yeah, I'm on board with clarifying that question. And then also just making explicit that we're only talking about town staff, not volunteer time.
Yeah. Is
that correct? Okay, good. Thank you. And Patrick has his hand up.
Patrick.
Yeah, I had a similar point as Aaron in that just getting very clear on the notion of being able to extend the payment period versus effectively making the payment by June 30th for services that are then provided beyond June 30th. I think, we should be very careful in like how and I think the SOW or the RFP articulates it that way.
Yeah.
But I think it's important not only for this notion of funding, but also, as has already been noted, for the continued support despite, when funding is available. Right. So I think so getting that distinction would be very helpful, but I would hope that we're able to, effectively expend those funds by June 30th and continue service through Q3 so that when we have more funding, presumably in November, the support is seamless. And then Megan, maybe just thank you very much for the work that you're doing and kind of getting flexibility here. My only ask would be that, if you could, before we commit to anything, we kind of we have that option open to us. I think we'll have a sense of the projected cost for the consultant to respond to the RFP here rather shortly
Roads, or you covered that thought? Megan, were you done with your update?
Yeah, well, I think. I think I need to maybe get either bring in our finance director, for the next meeting or have him provide something in writing because. The concept of prepaying for services is not, really possible in municipal finance and. I am not familiar with state rules, how they differ. They have some different operation, but we can't pay for things that haven't occurred yet or goods we haven't received. So that's a hard reality. But I hear you too, Patrick, on wanting to see what we're talking about before we commit to that. So if maybe I put together the staff time and resources spent for the next meeting. And then you look at that with the budget that you have together and see if if there's a comfort level.
So we're going, given the obligation, well, I guess this lines up. I was gonna say, the obligation we have is to be in front of the board of selection.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can do that, if not. Lee, you had something?
Just a couple of suggestions.
Yeah.
On town council bills for this project.
Yes, that's on the list too. Thank
On
you.
an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
as well. And then, it may be unknown about going forward, but if relevant staff is asked to actually keep track of their time for this project, it might be easier if that's available sometime in the future, that they can just submit it. And then the other thought I had is perhaps in addition to this appropriation from the state, perhaps there's some one or more grants that might be available that perhaps are more flexible in terms of the time within which we have to spend it.
Let's see, looks like Scott, you have your hand up?
Yeah, Megan, or maybe somebody else can answer this, maybe Chris or Megan. Can the town put money in escrow in June for the future payment? So you're designated the money before June, but you put the money in escrow for that consultant?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? Did we?
No,
Okay.
does the town have the ability to put money in escrow for the future consultant practice going through the fall, the summer and the fall? Like, if it's like a $300,000 engagement and they've spent 150 to date and it's now the end of June. And they need to spend another 150,000. Can you put the 150,000 in escrow at the end of June? And then pay them as they perform the task?
I don't think so. I've been, like I said, I've been trying to find a way to spend this money next year and my understanding is that it needs to be spent. But I have not.
was wondering
specifically
about
asked for
escrow meaning spent. Yeah, does escrow mean spent? That's my question.
it. Okay,
Chris, did you want to say something? I know you're not, I just noticed you're not muted.
Yeah, so I would defer to our finance director's advice. My understanding is that it depends on the funds. My understanding is that we cannot encumber or save state funds. So that the services have to be actually performed in this fiscal year. If it's town funds, that might be a different question. If the source of the funding is town funds, maybe there's some flexibility to encumber over fiscal years. But again, that's really a conversation for the finance director.
so more to come on that. I did talk to him briefly before Thanksgiving and he's out of town this week, so I think that we'll reconnect at your next meeting.
Team finance director.
Yeah, Anthony Ansel is our finance director, and I will come back to you. You'll have a budget at the next meeting. I'll be in touch with you, Dan and Patrick, about the number that I'm coming up with regarding expenses incurred. And then you can have a discussion at the next meeting, if that's okay? Okay.
Absolutely, thank you.
Did you have one more on this, Scott?
Scott, did you have another question? You just haven't put your hand up.
Okay, and thank you for letting me take a little extra time. The last thing I wanted to mention is Sorry for the last minute, but I did, Shannon did send around a white paper this morning. You probably haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but it's exploring the potential relocation of Concord Public Works campus to MCI Concord site. And so we do have our Public Works Director, Alan Cathcart here, and we have our Facilities Director, Russ Carlstead here. This isn't specifically spelled out on the agenda, but I just wanted to make sure the team was here if questions came up. Really, we're looking, as you know, this advisory board is looking at a component of property in town. There's a lot of needs right now between Public Works and our public safety offices. There's a lot of properties that may be coming online in the next couple of years, and we're thinking about how we can take this puzzle of needs and opportunities and kind of solve some of our problems. And so there's a document that was sent out this morning that explains the concept of relocating Public Works to a portion of the site. And I just wanted, you know, I know there's been some questions about what does the town want, what does the town care about? And this is one avenue that we are interested in exploring and wanted to kind of lay out the reasons why and bring it to your attention.
Great, thank you. Peter?
Yeah, thank you for sending around the white paper. I think we need to clarify a couple of things. So in order to really assess this in a holistic manner, and I really appreciate the fact that the facilities folks put together the acreage that you need for the campus. So we would also need to know and I'm sorry, my memory is a sieve. I don't know the acreage for the 229 Main Street or the Peabody School properties.
Sure.
So if we get that, and then we also need to clarify the acreage of our site. People say 51 acres plus the Junction Village site, when actually the Junction Village and the MCI site is a total of 51
No,
acres.
Paul clarified that. I was under the same impression too. At least that, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the site is actually 51.
Is it 51? Thought it was 37 something plus the 13 for the other.
Paul?
No, I've seen that kicked around a couple times, and the existing site, the 965 Elm Street core of the MCI Concord prison is 51, which is separate from the just under 13 on the Junction Village site, and distinct from the additional acreage still to be determined to the west of Commonwealth Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing that up in public forum so we can put that out clearly.
Yeah.
There was a press release that said 37, not that long ago.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
you know.
So I've been looking at the
Yeah.
old press clippings
Yeah.
and stuff.
No, I know. It's
But so, given that it's 51 plus 13, we still need to be able to, overlay, as Elizabeth Hughes did for us, the riverfront setback and the wetlands and floodplains, and recognize that some of that is not going to be buildable unless, the DPW says they can magically, put municipal projects into floodplain or riverfront setback, where stuff isn't done. I may be able to do that where the existing sewage treatment plant is, because it's an existing building, but, we just need a little bit more clarity around what we can do. So.
All right,
I just had a question. I didn't get a chance to read the white paper yet, but does the white paper evaluate the needs, given the reality of the other properties available, or is it just solely looking at MCI? Like, is there a comparison of like the pros and cons of any of the other available sites?
It doesn't really get into that, but I will say, tune in, or you're gonna maybe be there at the December 16th select board meeting anyway, because that is where this conversation is going to the select board, where we're gonna talk about this property matrix that we're working on, and looking at the needs of the town, like I explained with Public Works, public safety. And there's also an interest in consolidated town offices that based on a 2020 facility study that we had done. And through this discussion, on the 16th, we're gonna be looking at a tool to potentially evaluate different locations for different purposes.
Great.
And, you know, the 2229 folks have been talking about this, and you all have been talking about this, and this is gonna be a way to start the conversation as a town. But how are we looking at this? And so this paper doesn't get into that specifically, it's just kind of making a pitch for the current limitations at the campus. But it does talk about, you know, what would moving municipal use off of the Kais Road campus unlock? And, you know, that could allow for some of the other things that we care about as a community, like walkable commercial or housing. And how is this all gonna lay out?
Scott?
Yeah, I hope we're looking at other properties as well as this property, because I'm just thinking about the truck traffic integrating with all the housing and retail and affordable housing and all the mixed use in that area, going on to Route 2 and how it affects with Route 2. Just seems like a lot, and I just hope we do studies that look into that public works traffic coming and going from that site with everything else going on, with it being in a livable city with kids and other people in the area. So just want to make sure we're really thinking through it.
Great, thank you. Not seeing any other,
Sorry.
oh, sorry.
I just had one follow-up question, maybe for our future agendas. Perhaps we should engage with the other parcel advisory boards. I know there's a 229 Main Street one. I don't know if there's a Peabody site one there, but.
I'm pretty sure 2229 is one of our stakeholder groups that we identified, but I'm not sure about Peabody.
Peabody is still the school committee.
Right.
So then we would have it captured. But good point. Okay. Is that your complete? Okay.
That's it for now, but
Thanks.
if this is on a future, you know, agenda, I know, and speak for my colleagues, I'd be happy to come back and answer more questions.
Yeah, I would definitely like to hear. I was going to, if we weren't running behind, unless you feel like you've got like 1 minute thing that we really should.
I think the 1 minute, again, Alan Cathcart, Public Works Director, is, you know, MCI redevelopment is new to the town. The need for, you know, some of the municipal, you know, redevelopment has been around for decades. Was kind of captured in 2019 with a large assessment of, you know, where we need to go. There hadn't been much progress made, partly because site constraints. And so this is just a new opportunity. And one of the things we realized is for the wastewater treatment plant, the area around that, immediately buffering that, is going to be less than desirable for some activities, but maybe not others. And I think it's a matter of, as Meg mentioned, it's going to be a patchwork of, you know, you move here, you create opportunities there. So think of it as we are trying holistically, as if Public Works moves, then what, you know, I consider it a domino effect.
Yeah.
And really what we've been challenged with, we've been frozen without any real opportunity, hence nothing's happened. It's a decade or so, and this just could be the beginning of momentum, you know, that's all.
Okay, great, thank you. That's very helpful. Okay, the next item of business is a discussion of proposed budget and preparing for the select board presentation. We kind of touched on that, which is helpful. I'm trying, and I don't have an answer for this, and maybe Patrick, you have some thoughts, but it seems to me, given that we have 2 weeks, that perhaps a meeting or a conversation with Megan and Patrick and I, just to try to pull that together. As I shared quickly, the initial news, albeit limited, but they did certainly put a lot of thought into it. And looked at comps that similar projects, so I feel like it's informed from that perspective. But I'm also a little bit anxious of going to the bank with one data point. So it would be helpful to just sort of put our heads together, and I don't want to wait until, and I'm stating the obvious, but I prefer not to wait until that day to try to scramble to put that together, so. I don't know what that means. I don't know what your availability is.
Oh, sure, yeah, of course.
And Patrick, I'm assuming you want to participate in that, you can.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, and I don't, unless others right now have thoughts about that they want or questions to talk about it, I don't have a lot more to discuss in this meeting. I just wanted to note it that that's a week before that we have to do. Between now and 2 weeks from now. No, nobody, okay, all right, great, that kind of helps us get almost back on schedule. So, it does get us on schedule. So the next item of business is, a discussion and a vote approval, on the request for proposal for concept planning, economic analysis, economic and market analysis and zoning. Do you wanna?
Sure. Can you share the, so I want to start off by thanking Shannon and Hughes for, as well as the land use subcommittee team members for the hard work of pulling this together. Shannon was typing the changes that we agreed upon in our meeting just prior to this, right up to the beginning of our 12 o'clock session. So we've been able to incorporate comments from DCAM into this, and we just had a few questions that we thought might be useful for input from the rest of the group. Maybe if we could scroll through and highlight any issues that came up. So let's see. The MIPA piece keeps coming up, and the concept here is that we want to make sure that the consultant, when hired, would collect all of the data to make it easier to do a MIPA permit as part of the redevelopment process. So I think we had some discussion about this and decided just to keep that language in there and just explain to the respondents to the RFP that that's our intent. And then we had some new language around historic preservation that Linda was able to provide us that I think really explicates and expands on the intent of sort of embracing the past and going into the future here. And then there were some minor format changes as part of this community cohesion and interaction. I think we had a couple of comments that were incorporated in the current change. And this was one, we actually got a question for you, Megan. So Paul Littlehagen had suggested that there might be some regional importance or some process set up for other towns to provide comments. In our discussions, we thought maybe the Magic subgroup could provide comments, but we thought that any decision along those lines should be deferred to the town and the select board, because we don't want to give other communities sort of leverage points on Concord's redevelopment process. So I think, just asking the Magic subgroup for input might cover that, but we wanted to make sure that it was a move that the town entered into in full awareness.
Yes, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
I think that covers all the towns, right?
Yeah.
So-
It
And
says Keith at MAPC too. Keith.
Yeah, Keith.
Yeah.
Keith,
Well-
I'm not sure if he's the Magic contact, but he has been in the past, so. And Keith has a way of inserting himself into these types of things that I think is a benefit to the town, so
Definitely.
we'll figure that out.
Okay.
Forward. So there were a number of collection of existing documents, and maybe Alan, if you're here, you know if, so we talked about, we had a question about the existing underground utilities on the site. Is that something DOC has and would eventually turn over to our friends at TCAM or?
Yeah, I imagine they would, we don't have them, but they should, the facilities team, and we would be, we should probably make that request soon. We will, let's say, be talking with DCAM and their engineers, at least on the wastewater side, shortly. They did reach out and say they have a firm, and we can raise that question at that meeting.
That would be great, because, our intent here was, that they should be looked at in terms of, is there any of the spaghetti that's underground that we can reuse? Is there any way we can convert it to like a network geothermal or district heating system for the entire site? And, not having any idea of the state of the infrastructure, it's hard for us to do that, but that might be captured under the additional documents from DCAM as available. But I would like to keep it in there, just more as, if we get questions from the consultants, we can tell them that it's important, but we don't have it yet. And hopefully it'll fall under the additional documents from DCAM.
I was gonna, but Paul, not to put you on the spot, but I wanna make sure that our assumption is correct. When your comment led us to believe that you guys were not, that was not part of the initial survey that you were having done. Is that accurate?
Right. We're not doing full underground mapping. And I think it's worth drawing a distinction between the documents in the list of like stuff that's being provided to a prospective consultant or the world of prospective consultants for response, details like this, which are more detailed than they would be able to respond to in an RFP anyways, and what would be provided, like this, as a part of the planning process, and happy to, get as much information to them as possible in the planning process when there's a selected partner on contract, rather than, everybody who doesn't actually need to know the intricacies of what's, say underneath a historic prison. I think they know how to engage it professionally from a proposal perspective, and then we'll make sure that the selected team gets, whatever we're able to share with them.
So should we add after that bullet point from, underground utility information from DCAM subcontractor?
Or say, I think it's fine as is. We're not going underground and like remapping everything. So it's not like, we're in a understanding what we know and what is, documentable. We're not sending somebody down into every tunnel.
And Paul, would we be correct to assume, or maybe not, that DOC would theoretically have some decent information on that? On the underground utilities as-built?
I think it's worth assuming that this is a site that's been in place since the 1870s, and there's stuff that has been documented in recent work, and as there is in most places in the Commonwealth, I'm sure there's stuff that dates back a century and hasn't been documented.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
So I know we're all looking forward to seeing the drawings of the wooden water infrastructure delivery systems, but Scott has his hand.
That's okay, Scott.
Hey, Paul, I just had a quick question. If there's no investigation of what's underground or mapping, I'm just curious, how do you account for the cost of abatement when you're going out to a developer RFP? How does a developer know what's underground, and when does that occur?
So we're right now working on a non-invasive, phase 1 and things like that. So we're getting the professional estimation of, what might be there. Typically, when we go out on things like this, you know, a developer typically once selected does a phase 2 as a part of their due diligence period. So, you know, we're giving them information that will get them into the right ballpark. Those ballparks are large,
Yeah.
but it gives them an understanding of, you know, what they know and what they know that they don't know, rather than a bunch of stuff that they don't know.
And that affects the overall,
Yeah,
price for the property.
Right,
On what they
it-
find, what you found.
and it gets them within a range of risk where they're able to, you know, understand what they might be taking on.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Yep, thanks. Sorry,
No, go ahead.
you're still.
Yeah, so, we, incorporated a number of other changes here as well. And including under deliverables, Paul had suggested an existing conditions report. Some summary materials and presentation format. We thought those were great ideas. Thank you, Paul. And then, sort of reiterating the, community engagement, public engagement as a portion of the, process. And we jumped into phase 2 and to sort of highlight the fact that sort of, we've put the community engagement phase 1 ending at the end of June. So, and that is to make clear to the consultants that will be a phase 2 of community engagement. And, again, we added in some material here based on some of Paul's comments. Again, this is sort of John Boynton and the communications groups bailiwick. So John, just ask when you're taking a look at this, when you get back from wherever your vacation has taken you, take a look at this and make sure you're comfortable with it, and contact Shannon with any potential changes.
So he's in Amsterdam, he texted me, and he's not able to join the meeting, so I would
I'll
request,
field it.
thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, then the concept plan process, again, we got some good feedback from DCAM. We're able to incorporate that in here. It basically is very similar to what we have. Just scroll through it unless there's anything that jumps out to the team. Deliverables, we sort of reordered the deliverables here based on super editor Linda Miller's incredible insights.
Super.
Yes. She gets promoted every time. Yeah. So, but, you know, thank you. There were some, good concepts, I think, that got carried through here, so that's appreciated. And here did we include market analysis under task for economic impact?
We did it on the title, I know that.
Yeah, so I think we need to put that back in. Right. Good. And,
Can I make a comment? So because I realized that it was only a subset, the feedback that we got from that consultant also strongly urged us to consider introducing the market and economic analysis similar to zoning as early in the process as possible, just to inform that kind of thinking, and so there's some continuity of there.
so if that's the case, should we change that from May through June to February through June, or March through
Good
June?
catch, Peter.
February or March?
March.
March, yeah. And then under task 5, Paul, you'll be glad to know we were able to find a example to include of a citizen's guide, that we can, and we've attached that to the appendix. We came up with a deliverable here of a form-based code citizens guide. And Paul, if you or Adam know of any existing form-based code citizens guide, if you could send that our way. We don't really want to pay for someone to recreate the wheel. But if necessary, we'll take something and modify it to address the concerns raised by our community. Tailor it for Concord.
Maybe Mark Bobrowski has something like that.
Yeah, that's quite possible. And then final zoning ordinance, we added in reiterating as deliverables the bylaw text and final zoning map amendments. And then budget, we adjusted the timeline. I think we were.
I haven't adjusted it yet, but the discussion we had was if the issuance of the RFP is delayed by a week, we're just gonna shift these dates by a week.
Yeah, so, but up to, we're holding the June 30 and
Yeah.
November, yeah.
So these highlighted dates would be pushed.
Yep.
So just so Paul knows that, so our goal, Paul, is to get it, be able to be in a position to release it by Friday.
Right.
And yeah, and then
That's
we
pretty
sort of
much it.
scrolled through and there were some, we added a couple more attachments. And I think that's pretty much it. So I'm sure folks have questions, because I know we all do during our 11 to 12 o'clock session, so happy to try and address those.
Wait, can you put it back up?
Yeah.
Just scroll up, there's a couple pages towards the end,
Which page?
like the price estimates.
Here?
Yeah, so I'm just curious with like, for example, at 5 and 6, is that gonna present a problem with our June 30 invoice deadline?
Well, we know we're not gonna, no one's gonna be able to make it. So the idea here was, this would be phase 2 of the project.
Yeah, I think Representative Chalga asked us to
Get a cost.
get a budget for future allocation, so. That was the hope, that we would have some numbers.
Yeah. And if, the state's working their reimbursement process similar to what Megan clarified earlier, maybe the funds expended from June 30, if we do get a new earmark, up until November, when the contracts get executed, could be reimbursed from the state back to the town. And what I'm saying is maybe the town could think about upfronting that if we get an earmark. All right.
Any other questions?
This is Paul, I would just flag, I think the comment similar to like the underground utilities that we talked about before, which I think is, something that we will get as much info as we can to a selected developer. I saw that there were still a couple of flags in the attachments section on, unless there's something to share, probably don't list it in the attachments. So Shannon or whomever, if you can take another look through that before finalizing.
So if there are no further questions, I think what we want to try to do is vote to approve it as amended so that we can keep the process going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay. And I'm gonna do a roll call looking at my screen. Scott?
Yes.
Okay, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes,
Linda,
Yes,
Lee,
Yes.
Dan, yes.
and I want to, just, in addition to thanking town staff, I want to thank, DCAM staff, Paul and your
Yes.
team,
Quick
for
turnaround.
your inputs that really helped inform the process. And as Simon Cataldo has said, it's a great example of collaboration between the state and community. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you everybody on your side for all of the thought and work that you're putting into this. We are really impressed with the town, both staff and residents, commitment here, and look forward to continuing to work together.
All right, wow, and we're like back on track. So, subcommittee reports, legal and government affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, so we are currently working on drafting our own communication letters to follow up on the public outreach committee letters. Specifically, we are going to be working with to reach out to MassDOT. We're working with Simon's office as well to come up with a liaison there, and hopefully we'll get that done, get something set up soon. And that's basically what we got.
Excellent. Thank you. It's been an effort. Peter, you kind of gave a heck of a.
I just want to thank the committee members. They did a tremendous amount of work. So thank you, Scott, Kristen, Linda, and Dan.
Thank you for your leadership. It was a team effort. And then since John is not here, Patrick, are you in a position to give an update on community outreach?
Honestly, they haven't met.
Oh,
We haven't had a meeting.
Yeah, I think maybe they're meeting this Friday, but
there's not much to report.
Yeah, that may be on my calendar.
And it looks like he may have left.
I think he's having Wi-Fi issues.
Okay.
I've seen him drop off a couple times.
Okay.
But yeah, like.
Okay. So that gets us to public comment. Are there any folks, public questions or comments?
I would like to thank Shannon for putting public comment letters on the website. So anyone who has public comment now certainly can use that as a vehicle to communicate with the advisory board and the subcommittees.
Good point. Yep.
Mhm.
I don't see any comments. Wow, all right. So I would entertain a motion to end the meeting.
So moved.
If all those in favor, up and